But let me also sketch a picture. Let's dig the ruts wider, the critical ruts, see what hidden streams we hit, could we float? Start with a coat, Roethke's. He liked to swim in it. I mean, to have it billow around his bulk. He was bearish in scope, a real dancing bear. Once asked someone he was dating if she could get any dirt on what bears' caves smell like in winter. She was a librarian. Anyway, his coat, big pockets for notebooks. Next week, we'll focus a lot on those notebooks, how they link to contemporary poetics and to Lorene Niedeker. Funny those two aren't talked about together more. Roughly contemporary, poets of the upper Midwest, place and song. But the coat, large to make the large man larger, surround sound. It contributed to what Richard Hugo called his W.C. Fields as gangster affect, a stage gangster ready for vaudeville, even into an era after vaudeville, for a variety show. See how he shimmies, soft-shoed, when he singingly recites in these films of him reciting his ditties or holding himself together, a costume. This spinning holds the nest in place. The scholar William Barrios mentioned it the other week, that coat. He's the editor of A Field Guide to the Poetry of Theodore Roethke, terrific book. This was at a meeting for the Friends of Theodore Roethke Foundation. I just joined the board. It's a really inspiring group. What they do for Roethke's legacy is about his house in Saginaw, preserving it, doing programming there. But it's also about everything a house can be home to, not just to preserve a critical shrine, but what legacy can spin us into. And Barrios at this meeting mentioned Roethke's coat, a raccoon skin coat owned by the late poet until recently, Stanley Moss. Bill mentioned a poem that Moss had written about this coat, poems called How I Got Ted Roethke's Raccoon Skin Coat. It starts with Moss gifting to his friend Roethke a plaque by Renoir. In return, with a laugh, he gave me 10 dead raccoons, a blue and gold lining, his raccoon skin coat made for hard Michigan winters. The poem goes on to chart later exchanges, gifts, a note. The coat, though, is winningly dissembled in these lines into 10 dead raccoons. You might picture the single trench coat, that cartoon meme cliche, holds a bunch of cats or raccoons or little brats on one another's shoulders, a disguise. But in Roethke's case, that mass was swarming around him. One critic called him a mad microcosm of a private sensibility. He was more of a zoo, really, sticky with what Kenneth Burke called the curative element of primeval slime, curative as in curation and healing and preserved and more. What Stanley Kunitz called creatures still moist with the waters of the beginning. You might want to clean that coat. But I'd like now to change course for a second and invite a special guest who will tell us a little bit more about this. This is the chair of the Committee of the Coat. He has a report, and then we're going to hurry a bit on to the next bits. We'll talk about what's happening next week. We'll look at the book more and have time to talk. So here's Henry Goldkamp. Henry's here, poet and co-owner. Thanks so much for joining us. Were you going to tell us some stuff, Henry?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you some stuff. Thanks for having me, Zach. If I had the time, I would have created a slide that sort of mimics those Animorphs paperback children's books where it's like Teddy Roethke slowly transforming into like a half raccoon, half bear, half dog. So if you could just sort of envision that for me, it would be great. See, when I was an undergrad, it was poems like Papa's Waltz and Root Cellar that unlocked my understanding of like poetic mimesis, that sort of localized interplay of form and content. It's easy to teach, and you can really feel that belt buckle on your cheek with the meter, but it was in one of those sort of quick-footed anthology intros to Roethke, and I think my memory is betraying me here, but his nickname was, in my mind, the Bear. But then it turns out it's the Dancing Bear, which I don't remember, but that's fine, I can use that. And it was not just because of his, big stature, but it was actually because of the raccoon coat that he had, which another interesting tidbit that I'm probably making up in my head was that he was at Yale. Is that right, Zach? Yale? That's right, sort of. Ivy League. But he was sort of feeling insecure because everyone else had mink, and then all he has a raccoon coat. So I was into Recce for a second as an undergrad, and I was like, I wonder how much a raccoon coat costs, you know? So I looked it up on eBay, and it wasn't too bad. And after a beastly sort of clash, the auction did get a little hairy, but I ended up getting it. And for about $200, I got this raccoon fur coat, which, lo and behold, sort of bought me entry into lecturing a cameo for Zach's thing here. And this is pretty much my only credentials. But as you can see, it's very big. It's a bit ostentatious. It's a bit affected. It's very warm, but I found myself sort of ashamed of it, and I couldn't really wear it. I was thinking too much of Laver's Law. Do you all know Laver's Law, the sort of historian, all these descriptors? It's indecent if it's 10 years before its time. It's dowdy if it's 1 year after its time. I can sort of show you on my script here. It's probably completely illegible, but that's fine. But I'm thinking, you know, when did bears come onto the scene? Can we call evolution ancient? Or is it sort of shameless, dowdy, and beautiful all at once? Does fashion go out the window if I were to sort of grow the dog hair? Which, if you'll just excuse me for a moment. And don the raccoon fur. And perhaps even grow a bear head. Does this wearing of this coat make me a better poet? Definitely. Obviously it does. The point I'm trying to make is based on the etymology of the word coat. You guys know the etymology of the word coat? Of course you don't. There isn't one. It's one of those strange words that's of an unknown origin, up there with blatantly the most poetic words out there. Gizmo, surf, dog, tip, and coat. McLuhan said clothing is an extension of the skin. The domicile, a further extension of the skin. The city of Saginaw, of Cleveland, of New Orleans, of Iowa City, and so on. There are layers to me. My own personal epidermis, the polyester mat of this extremely hot dog costume, 27 to 30 raccoons, actually, not 10. That would be a very, very tight raccoon coat, as my research informed me. And the plastic rubber that was flopping atop my skull. I don't want to be a poet of hope. I'll ask the audience, what did Emily Dickinson say what is hope again? What is it? Anyone? No one knows what Emily Dickinson said about hope?
Hope is the thing with feathers.
Thank you. What I want to be is a poet of joy, not hope. And in thinking this, I want to be like Roethke, the poet of joy, because unlike hope, joy cannot be cruel, ever. I'm ripping off of Zach's work here, who says that hope can sometimes be cruel. And joy doesn't have a segue, but it does what it wants. So for reasons I can't explain, later, I'm going to share a song with you and introduce you to my father. Zach, you mentioned earlier Burke's, or maybe you didn't, maybe in the email, you mentioned Burke's primeval slime. Did you end up saying that today? You did. Okay, good. The song I want to play for you is called I'm a Gummy Bear. And as you'll soon see, it shares definite affinities with what someone else said. The word that they affiliate with Roethke is waltzing. This is traditional waltzing here. And my father, like all fathers, is a faceless blank slate with a feminine shape that's covered in asbestos from sleeping in the attic for too long. Now, if you listen closely to the lyrics I'm about to play for you, you'll find that this dancing bear is inscribed with 9 different qualities. Yummy, chummy, funny, lucky, moving, grooving, jamming, singing, and of course, gummy. Thus, Cyan Nye's aesthetic categories of cute, zany, interesting are exploded into an entire dozen, and that's what donuts get ordered in. The Gummy Bear also states in its hyper dribble of lyrics that 3 times you can bite me, an obvious allusion to the betrayal of Christ, but I don't have time to talk about that right now. But by golly, by gee, by gum, E. Cummings says in his poem Next to God, of course, America, Gum is nature's natural source of tackiness. Soon after my very short-lived Roethke phase, I became an insufferable Berryman fan, a Berry Boy stan, and John's toxically sticky syntactical mannerisms continue to dominate my thinking of modernism. Case in point. From my first poem, my sequence, Dream Saginaw songs. I don't see how Roethke, pried open for all the world to see, survived. What he has now to say is a long wonder the world can bear and be. Once in an eastern white pine, I was glad all at the top, and I sang, hard on the land, where's the strong snow, and beans on every plate. In the world, Roethke did indeed bear his nickname, dancing like a circus act, my forte, or as Zach more importantly puts it, a real dancing bear. Berryman was also dogged by his father's death, like Roethke. Describe dogs, usual dogs. Zach told me this morning that Roethke wrote in his notebook from his new book, Field of Telephones. I'm a dad, just like the ones that Roethke and Berryman had for sons. My kids watched The Polar Express last night, which is the most demonic, unhinged Christmas movie in the world in none of the good ways. I'm not sure why this movie remains in Christmas canon, well, since 2004, because it's essentially a Christmassy version of Tarsem Singh's The Cell, starring J-Lo, which came out 4 years prior. More like Tom Hanks, my dad joke might go. My kids are yelling at the kid in Polar Express last night to get on the Magic Santa train. The kid is hesitating, though, due to his faltering belief in Santa. My kids are so annoyed with the kid. They go, go. And then they're just going, go. Just go. The train begins to leave without the kid. So I say, oh no, is it going to leave him? Kind of seriously, actually. I'm so good at willful suspension of disbelief. I often die in theaters. No, he's going to run towards it, one kid corrects me. I know this movie 100 times. I like that idea of knowing a movie 100 times. Strike up the band. I want to dance.
Oh, I'm a gummy. I'm a gummy. Oh, me, I'm a gummy. I'm a gummy bear. I'm a gummy. Oh, I'm a gummy.